Welcome to Backbone Unlimited. My name is Matt Hartsky. In this episode, I'm going to walk you through how I would approach hunting elk if I had to start completely over today. No history, no proven spots, no habits, good or bad, just a clean reset. Because the truth is, a lot of elk hunters spend years learning the wrong lessons. They chase tactics, they copy what they see online, and they try to piece things together without ever building a real foundation. And that costs them time. Seasons go by, effort goes up, but results don't necessarily change. If I was starting over, I wouldn't begin with calling strategies or gear lists. I wouldn't focus on advanced tactics. I'd start by understanding elk and building a structure around how they actually live, move, and survive. That's the difference. If you're not familiar with who I am, I've been hunting and guiding Western big game for over 34 years, and I've been a professional strength conditioning and nutrition coach for more than 30 years, and I'm here to help you become a more successful and consistent elk hunter and outdoorsman. This episode is a shortcut, but not the kind a lot of people are looking for. It's not a quick fix. It's a way to eliminate wasted time by focusing on what actually matters first and ignoring all the other stuff that doesn't. Because if you get the foundation right, everything else gets easier. And if you don't, it doesn't matter how hard you try, you're going to keep spinning your wheels. Step number one, I would stop chasing tactics and learn how elk live. If I was starting over today, the first thing I would do is stop chasing tactics. Most beginners get pulled into that right away. What call should I use? How aggressive should I be? What gear do I need? What should I do when I hear a bugle? It all feels important, and some of that is going to be important for you in the field. It's good to expose yourself to all that information, but none of it works if you don't understand why elk are where they are in the first place. Elk behavior drives everything. They don't move randomly. They don't choose areas by accident. Every decision an elk makes is tied to survival, security, wind, terrain, and efficiency. If you don't understand how those pieces come together, you're just guessing, and that's why tactics fail. You can make the right call in the wrong place and blow the opportunity. You can run a perfect setup with the wrong wind and never even know elk were around. Without context, even good tactics fall apart, and that's where a lot of elk hunters get stuck. They copy strategies that worked for somebody else in a different situation under different conditions, and they expect the same result. It doesn't work that way. If I was starting over, I'd spend my time learning how elk actually live, how they use terrain, how they position with the wind, how they respond to pressure. I'd focus on patterns, not tricks and advanced tactics, because once you understand elk behavior, your decisions start making more sense. And without that, nothing else matters, because tactics without understanding is just going to waste your time. Step number two, I would only hunt areas that actually hold elk. If I was starting over, I would get ruthless about where I chose to hunt, because location solves most problems before they ever start. Elk are only going to stay in places that give them what they need to survive: security, food, and a consistent wind advantage. If those three things aren't present, elk might pass through, but they won't live there. And if they're not living there, your odds are going to drop fast. This is where a lot of elk hunters go wrong. They hunt areas that look good instead of areas that function right. Maybe big open basins or pretty parks, easy glassing knobs. Those places draw hunters just as much as they do elk. And once pressure hits, elk don't stick around. They shift. They move into overlooked terrain, thicker cover, steeper side hills, broken pockets that aren't obvious on a map, areas that are harder to access and easier to control with wind, and most elk hunters never follow them there. Instead, they stay committed to spots that should hold elk. If I was starting over, I wouldn't waste time trying to make a spot work. I'd focus on eliminating bad ground as fast as possible. I'd constantly ask, does this area provide security, food, and wind advantage for elk under the current conditions? If the answer is no, I'm moving, because you can do everything else right, but if you're in the wrong place, none of it matters. Most elk hunters don't need to just hunt harder. They need to hunt better locations. Step number three, I would build my entire strategy around wind and positioning. If I was starting over, I would build everything around those two things because more elk encounters are lost to wind than anything else. And most hunters don't even realize it's happening. The elk smells you, shifts, and disappears before you ever know it was there. That's not bad luck. That's the system working against you. Wind isn't just direction either, it's how air actually moves through terrain. Thermals might be rising in the morning and they might be falling in the evening, but that's only part of the equation. Terrain bends wind, breaks it, and creates pockets of swirl that can betray you in seconds. Benches, draws, thick timber, broken side hills, all of those influence how your scent travels. Elk understand that. They use terrain to control the wind advantage, and mature bulls especially will position themselves where they can monitor what's behind them while watching what's in front. And when they approach, they don't come straight in. They usually circle. They use terrain to get your wind before they commit. If your setup allows that, you lose every time. So if I was starting over, I wouldn't set up where it just feels comfortable or looks good. I'd set up where elk are most likely to travel based on terrain and wind, and I'd make sure my scent never reaches that path because positioning isn't about being close. It's about being in the one place elk can't detect you. If the wind is wrong, nothing else matters. Step number four, I would focus on finding elk, not killing them at first. If I was starting over, I would shift my focus away from killing elk and put it entirely on finding them. And that sounds backwards, but it's the fastest way to actually succeed. Most beginners jump straight to the killing strategies. They want to know how to call, how to close distance, how to finish the encounter. But none of that matters if you're not consistently finding elk. That's the real skill. Finding elk over and over again in different conditions or different terrain and under pressure, that's what builds experience. Every time you locate elk, you learn something. You start recognizing patterns. You see how they use wind. You understand how they move through terrain and how they respond to pressure. Those reps are what matter. Without them, you're just guessing. You might get lucky once now and then, but you won't be able to repeat it. If I was starting over, I'd remove the pressure of needing to kill something right away. I'd treat every day in the field as an opportunity to learn how to find elk more consistently. Where are they? Why are they there? How are they moving? Because once you can answer those three questions regularly, everything else starts to fall into place. Opportunities become more frequent, setups become clearer, decisions become easier, and eventually the kill takes care of itself. Because if you can consistently find elk, killing one becomes just a matter of time. Step number five, I would learn when to leave and when to commit. If I was starting over, I would put a heavy focus on decision making, specifically knowing when to leave an area and when to commit to it, because this is where seasons are won or lost. Most elk hunters fall into time traps. They invest effort into an area, and instead of evaluating it honestly, they stay because they've already put time into it. They keep telling themselves it's about to happen, even when the signs don't really support that. That's not discipline, that's attachment. Good elk hunters separate themselves right there. They learn to recognize good setups quickly and they don't hesitate to move on from bad ones. They're not guessing, they're evaluating. If the wind isn't predictable, if the terrain doesn't support elk movement, if there's no fresh sign or the pressure doesn't make sense, they don't force it, they move on and find different country. On the other side of that, when things do line up, they commit, they slow down, they stay disciplined, and work the situation the right way instead of rushing through it. This is the shift from emotional decisions to structured decisions. You're no longer reacting to what you want to happen, you're responding to what the conditions are actually telling you. If I was starting over, I'd build that evaluation mindset early. I'd constantly ask, does this setup actually make sense or am I just trying to make it work? Because at the end of the day, good elk hunters don't stay busy, they stay effective. Step number six, I would simplify everything and build a system. If I was starting over, I would absolutely simplify everything. Most elk hunters make elk hunting harder than it needs to be. They stack information, they chase new tactics, they worry about gear, and they try to piece together a plan from 100 different sources, and all that noise just creates confusion. What I would do instead is strip it down to just a few repeatable principles: location, movement, positioning, and decisions. That's it. Am I in a place elk actually want to be? Do I understand how they're moving through this exact area? Am I positioned in a way that gives me the advantage? And am I making clear decisions based on what I'm actually seeing? Everything I do would run through that filter. I wouldn't get caught up in gear. I wouldn't chase every new tactic. I wouldn't overthink every situation. I'd focus on building clarity because clarity leads to confidence, and confidence is what allows you to move through elk country with more purpose and less hesitation. And that's where consistency comes from. Not from knowing everything, but from understanding a few key things really well and applying those over and over again in different situations. If I was starting over, that's the foundation I'd build first because simple, repeatable systems beat complicated approaches or guessing, obviously, every time. If I was starting over today, this is the path I would follow because it's the fastest way to cut through the noise and start making real progress. Most elk hunters don't approach it this way, though. They spend years figuring this out the hard way, myself included. They bounce between tactics, second guessing decisions, and slowly piecing things together through trial and error. And eventually, some of it clicks, but it takes a lot longer than it needs to. This approach shortens that timeline. It gives you structure from the start. It helps you focus on what actually matters and ignore everything that doesn't. And more importantly, it gives you a way to evaluate what's happening in real time instead of just reacting to it. And that's the shift. You don't need more information. You need better focus. And this isn't something you wait to apply. You can take this mindset into your very next scouting session, your next weekend in the mountains, or your next season. Start thinking in systems. Start simplifying your decisions. Start paying attention to how elk actually live, because the sooner you build this foundation, the sooner everything else starts to fall into place. Now, if you want to go deeper into elk movement, pressure patterns, terrain positioning, and structured decision making, that's exactly why I built the elk hunting series of ebooks. It's a progressive system designed to help you understand how elk actually use country and how to position yourself accordingly. I have a link to those ebooks in the description. If you want hands-on application and real-time breakdowns, we have an in-person Elk Camp 2026 that is built around this same philosophy: structure, preparation, and execution in real time. 90% of Elk Camp is going to be running you through real scenarios. You can check out Elk Camp at backboneunlimited.com. And if you want ongoing access to the Team Backbone community, classroom, mindful digital content vault of elk resources, private discussions, and direct communication to me for planning, you can join Team Backbone at backboneunlimited.com underneath our membership tab. Everything we talk about here is connected. Preparation is not a single video, it's a system. Thanks for being here. Until next time, train harder, hunt smarter, and never settle.